Hey everyone, this is the Friday 4:30 asynchronous work. We're going to be talking about criteria and constraints, and we're going to be doing an engineering design challenge. So before we talk about anything else, you are going to go grab the materials that you will need for class. If you are at home, please go get 10 sheets of paper and a roll of any kind of tape. If you're at school, you don't need that stuff in front of you right now. We'll get it for you once Aquino and I are teaching the synchronous part of this lesson. So if you're at home, please pause this video, go get 10 sheets of paper and tape if you have it. If you don't have tape, we'll figure something else out. All right, hopefully you have that in front of you if you are at home, just so you're ready for class. Before we jump into any new vocab, I want to go over yesterday's stuff. Pause here for a minute and see if you can remember the 8 steps of the engineering design process. You can say them out loud, or you can write them down on some scrap paper or in your notebook. Go ahead and pause and remember those. All right, moving on to today's vocabulary. So the first vocab phrase is iterative design. That's the process of completing a design, testing it, and improving it repeatedly. Go ahead and say it out loud to yourself. Iterative design. So we talked about yesterday how engineering, a really important part of engineering is the fact that it's repeated over and over and over again until you get the product that really works for whatever you need. So whether that is a building design, a chair design, a computer design, anything like that, we're repeating that process as much as we need to until we get a product that is satisfactory. Obviously with a building, like the buildings that are being built near school, they're not building a full-scale one and seeing if it works correctly before then starting the process over. But they do build a lot of little models before they build an official full-size building. All right, 2 more vocab words today. First is criteria. This is a set of guidelines for a project. For example, the building should be 100 feet high. That's one of the goals for a building project, for example. And then constraints are the limits on a project. For example, the building can only be made of wood. We'll do a couple of practices with these, but think of the criteria as the goals and the constraints as the limits. Limits are often, or constraints are often like the budget, how much money they can spend on it, the types of materials that can be used, that kind of thing are all the constraints. All right, let's do a couple of examples on the criteria and constraints. So the first one, CCSC just designed a new cafeteria. Probably some of you have seen it at this point. I'm in it right now. CCSC wanted to be able to fit at least 100 students, and we had a budget of $500,000. This paragraph contains 1 criteria and 1 constraint. Pause and think about which one is which. So the criteria, remember, is the goal of, or the goals of a project. In this case, one of the goals of the CCSC cafeteria is that we wanted to be able to fit at least 100 students in it. So the criteria in this case is the capacity. We wanted to be able to fit at least 100 students. The constraints in this case is just about the budget, so how much money we had to spend on this. Schools in general run on a really tight budget. There's not a ton of extra money, so it's really important to stick to the limit of whatever the budget is. So in this case, the constraint was the money, $500,000. There were definitely a ton of other criteria and constraints. These are just a couple that were in this example. All right, one more example. PlayStation is designing a new game console for Michael. They know he wants it to have a virtual reality setting, and they want it to cost less than $100 to make. Pause and think about what might be the criteria and the constraints in this. All right, so let's start with the constraint. Generally, money is going to be constraint. There are very few projects and very few engineering design challenges that don't involve some money limits, right? When a college is building a new building, they only have a certain amount of money to spend on it. when a company is thinking about building something like a PlayStation, they have to constrain how much money it will cost for each one to be made, so that then they can make a profit on the rest. So the constraint in this case is that they want it to cost less than $100 to make. And then the criteria, again, that's the goals of the project, is that Michael specifically asked PlayStation to make something that has a virtual reality setting. So the criteria is something that they're hoping for out of this project. And in this case, it's the virtual reality setting. All right. I will see you in class. Please make sure that you have those materials ready to go if you are at home. Again, if you don't have tape, don't stress about it. We'll figure out an alternative. All right. See you soon.